While politicians remain preoccupied with debating the 15-point peace plan at the negotiating table, on the ground, the thunderous roar of Iranian air defense missiles is telling an entirely different story. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, has officially claimed to have downed a beast of the US Navy, the A-18 Super Hornet multi-role fighter, directly over the strategic skies of the port city of Chabahar. The United States immediately issued a rebuttal, dismissing the claim as fake news and psychological warfare. But is this merely a propaganda maneuver, or is the US Air Force genuinely facing a catastrophic crisis against Tehran's integrated air defense network? To find the truth, we must dissect the infrared tracking footage and electronic warfare signatures currently taking social media by storm. The leaked video from an electro-optical tracking system, EOTS, depicts a surface-to-air missile streaking upward and detonating in the immediate vicinity of a maneuvering fighter jet. Open-source intelligence (OSINT) observers suggest that while the F/A-18 may not have disintegrated into 1,000 pieces instantly, a proximity fuse detonating at that range would release thousands of tungsten cubes. These high-velocity fragments are designed to shred the aircraft's skin, compromise its hydraulic lines, and turn the delicate turbine blades of the engines into scrap metal. In the unforgiving physics of aerial combat, a near miss with a modern fragmentation warhead is often just as lethal as a direct kinetic impact. The appearance of a US strike fighter over Chabahar, a vital strategic location in the southeast near the mouth of the Gulf of Oman, indicates that Washington is attempting to penetrate deep into Iranian territory to surveil the underground missile cities. However, it appears the Pentagon may have drastically underestimated Tehran's mobile air defense doctrine. These batteries operate like ghosts. They remain cold and hidden within limestone caves or disguised as civilian commercial trucks. They reveal their electronic signature for only a few fleeting seconds to launch their interceptors before displacing and vanishing into the rugged terrain long before US reconnaissance satellites can provide a targeting solution for a counter-strike. The saga of the F/A-18 is not an isolated incident in this conflict. One must recall the shocking events of March 19th when an F-35A Lightning II, the crown jewel of Lockheed Martin's stealth technology, was forced to make an emergency landing in a state of near-total structural failure. Initially, CENTCOM attempted to suppress the cause of the incident, but the IRGC subsequently released high-definition infrared footage tracking the F-35 with terrifying precision. This reveals a harsh reality for Western air power. While the F-35's radar cross-section, RCS, may deceive older radar systems, it remains thermally radiant and highly visible to Iran's new generation of infrared and electro-optical sensors, such as the Majid system. The spectacle of a $100 million aircraft being crippled by a relatively inexpensive short-range missile has sent shockwaves through the halls of the Pentagon, US. Losses after 4 weeks of hostilities are significant. Approximately 20 aircraft have been destroyed or sustained heavy damage. Furthermore, the intensity of the theater has led to tragic friendly fire incidents, such as the accidental downing of 3 F-15Es by Kuwaiti batteries, highlighting the extreme tension and chaos within the regional air defense grid. An intelligence source from Tehran suggests that after these stinging losses involving the F-35 and F/A-18, both the US and Israel have begun to hesitate. The frequency of manned sorties penetrating deep into the Iranian heartland has seen a marked decline. Instead, they have pivoted toward a standoff tactic, utilizing cruise missiles launched from well outside Iranian sovereign airspace to mitigate the risk to pilots. However, even when shifting to unmanned platforms, the attrition rate remains staggering. Iran claims to have intercepted nearly 200 UAVs of various classes, ranging from low-cost loitering munitions to sky assassins like the MQ-9 Reaper. Tehran's publication of videos showing gargantuan underground surface-to-air missile SAM depots is a potent deterrent message. We have enough ammunition to play this war of attrition for years to come. The US is not only struggling with the fire net inside Iran, it is facing increasing lethality at its home bases within Iraq, pro-Iranian militias have begun deploying advanced man-portable air defense systems, MANPADS, with infrared seekers to hunt US aircraft during the critical takeoff and landing phases. The danger of these man-portable systems lies in their passive nature. They do not require a massive radiating radar station that can be easily detected and destroyed by US anti-radiation missiles. Instead, they operate silently, homing in on the intense thermal signature of an aircraft engine. By the time a pilot's cockpit warning system alerts them to a thermal lock, it is often far too late for flare dispensers to effectively decoy the incoming threat. The US decision to label Iran's claims as fake news may be a calculated move to stabilize public opinion and protect the stock valuations of major defense contractors. However, the observable fact that the US has restricted its deep penetration flights is the most vivid proof that Tehran's quills possess a lethal venom. This battle of wits between the shield and the arrow is far from over. Moving forward, every time a US pilot takes off in the Persian Gulf, there will likely be more prayers offered for their safety than reliance placed on the glossy, high-tech promises of stealth coatings. Exactly 1 month since the first explosions rattled the Middle Eastern sky, we are witnessing a fighting while talking scenario of extreme psychological intensity. If the first 3 weeks were characterized by a raw display of muscle through missiles and fighter jets, the 4th week has shifted to the shadowy, complex corridors of high-stakes diplomacy. President Donald Trump has recently announced a 5-day suspension of planned strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities. This is not a gesture of humanitarianism, but a calculated tactical pause. We must peel back the layers of this 5-day window to see what lies beneath. Is this a genuine window for a diplomatic breakthrough, or is it simply a rhythmic pause for both sides to reload their magazines for a more violent phase of the conflict? Why did Trump choose to halt the momentum at this specific moment? The answer is found not on the kinetic battlefield, but on the energy battlefield. 1 month of active combat has pushed Brent crude oil prices to soar past $103 per barrel. Iran's move to tax commercial transit or threaten a total closure of the Strait of Hormuz has created a global economic aftershock. Even as a superpower, the US cannot ignore the immense pressure from global allies and domestic voters as gasoline prices reach record highs. Furthermore, operational fatigue has set in. Having already struck numerous military targets and energy infrastructure nodes, escalating to strike nuclear facilities is an all-in gamble that could trigger a total regional war. Trump, operating with the mindset of a high-stakes negotiator, understands the need for a step back to probe whether the adversary is willing to blink before he delivers a potential knockout blow. While Washington and Tehran publicly declare their mutual enmity, behind the scenes, intermediary channels are operating at maximum capacity. This time, Pakistan has emerged as the pivotal central figure. The fact that Islamabad is relaying American proposals to Tehran indicates that both sides are searching for an honorable exit. However, a fascinating detail has surfaced in recent diplomatic reports. Iran appears to be selective about who they are willing to talk to. Regional media reports that Tehran has expressed a preference for discussing terms with Vice President J.D. Vance rather than Trump's traditional inner circle, such as Jared Kushner or Steve Witkoff. Why? It is possible that Iran believes J.D. Vance represents the new isolationist school of American thought, those who prioritize domestic interests and are less inclined toward direct military interventionism in the Middle East compared to the older generation of neoconservative politicians. This is a sophisticated probe aimed at dividing or reshaping the internal approach of the White House. Whether the pause lasts 5 days or 50, the harsh reality is that the fundamental positions of both sides remain separated by a vast ocean of distrust. The United States has presented maximalist demands: the total dismantling of nuclear programs, the cessation of ballistic missile development, and the severing of ties with all regional proxies. For Iran, this is not a negotiation, but a demand for unconditional surrender, a direct threat to the regime's survival. Conversely, Iran has issued its own stratospheric demands: the total withdrawal of US forces from the Gulf, the end of all sanctions, and massive reparations. This profound lack of strategic trust is the ultimate barrier. Tehran cannot forget the 2018 US withdrawal from the JCPOA nuclear deal, and thus every promise from the White House is viewed through a microscope of deep-seated skepticism. Finally, many military experts suggest that these 5 days are golden time for the US to reposition its forces. As analyzed in previous segments, the Marine Expeditionary Units arriving from California require additional time to consolidate in the Gulf. If there is no diplomatic progress after 5 days, the probability of the US launching a decapitation strike on Karg Island to choke off Iran's revenue remains extremely high. Iran is not sitting idle during this lull. They are reinforcing their mobile air defense batteries around the sensitive nuclear sites at Natanz and Fordo. They understand that without a localized ceasefire, the next wave of American strikes will be significantly more devastating. After a month of conflict, a bitter reality has become clear. Neither side has achieved an absolute advantage. The US cannot force Iran to submit through air power alone, and Iran cannot push the US out of the region with UAVs and missiles. Both are locked in an exhausting stalemate. The most optimistic scenario at this point is not a grand peace treaty, but rather a state of no war, no peace. Both sides will likely continue to apply military pressure at a controlled level to avoid a nuclear catastrophe or a global economic collapse. The Middle East stands in a grey zone. Trump's 5-day pause could be the beginning of a long cooling-off period, or it could be the final silence before an even greater storm breaks. In this game, the greatest mistake is believing the promises of politicians while ignoring the movements of the carrier fleets on the horizon.